It was fun at first, but eventually I got tired of the eating, and I think that's when the bulimia set in. Of course, the show's producers wouldn't let me go just like that. It got to the stage where I was force-fed my own weight in cakes almost every day. One man would kneel on my chest, while another would hold my nose and cram my mouth with confectionery. Look at me now. Overweight, diabetic. I can't even walk to the end of the street without breaking into a sweat. They ruined my life. The role became more difficult as my own personal life started to fall apart. My wife left me, and I ran up some huge debts. There seemed no way out. The producers had me put on Prozac to keep me smiling, but it wasn't enough. In the end, it was deemed that surgery was the best option, so now I'm stuck with the smile. Everyone always thinks I'm oh so happy, but inside, darkness, emptiness.
It got to the stage where the stunts got ever more ridiculous and ever more physically demanding. I remember one scene I was required to be hit by a truck, roll down a hill, bump into a tree, and then have a bird's nest fall onto my head for comic effect. I didn't find it very funny. I tried to walk, but the contract was watertight. The producers had me over a barrel. Sometimes literally. Yes, it was 3 eggs for breakfast in the morning, as I was told it was the source of my strength. What I wasn't told at the time was it was also a source of cholesterol. I can lift a truck above my head with one hand, but now my heart is weak as a kitten. I've got doctors telling me I'm going to have some life-changing bypass operation. And I'll tell you this, going through something like that requires a different kind of strength. You'll notice on the show a lot of the time people are trying to get me to be quiet because I talk too much. In real life, of course, people are trying to get me to be quiet because of my outdated opinions and racist viewpoints. I don't like blacks, you see. Some days it's just so hard to motivate myself. It's just an endless, pointless cycle, really, isn't it? We're all spiraling wildly into the darkness. Everything good fades away eventually. People say I let things get to me, but they didn't have to nurse Mr. Forgetful through the last days of his Alzheimer's. I watched him slip away day by day until he couldn't recognize me anymore. In the end, he was just a shell. A hollow shell. Sometimes I think maybe I am too. It was a terrible tragedy. I remember I helped the children out of the bus just in time, just before it sank into the river. And one little girl, she was so overjoyed to be alive, she reached out to hug me. Of course, sometimes I forget my own strength. Occasionally, when I'm laying there awake in the small hours, I fancy I can still hear her bones cracking beneath my arms. Tragedy. Absolute tragedy. Of course, now I'm addicted to the painkillers. I can't rely on them very heavily. Obsessive compulsive disorder. 3 little words, but words which have a great impact on my life. Casually disregarded by the producers as fussiness. Well, I'm afraid fussiness just doesn't do it justice. I have a serious behavioural dysfunction. I have to use a set square to cut my toast at the correct angles, for Christ's sake. Extra road tax for Asians and gays! Marvellous! It has been mentioned to me in the past, yes, and I have to say that it's sheer coincidence. To be honest, until somebody pointed it out to me, I hadn't even noticed. But I'd like to say now that although I may look like the man, I don't have anything against the Jews. Well, I don't know what they're all harping on about. I never got so much as a mention in the end credits.